start us off, we're going to have candidate for Kentucky State Treasurer, Mark Metcalf. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
There might be one too many Marks on the call today, so it might be a little confusing, but we'll get through it. I think
it'll be fine. Mark, you're up right now on the screen. Everybody can see you right here in Meade County. Thanks for taking the time on a Sunday to get some exposure, at least in our county. Tell us what you're running for and why people should vote for you. Getting to the chase.
I'm running for Kentucky State Treasurer, and the reason voters should vote for me has to do with a number of things, but let's first of all talk about the depth and breadth of my experience. I am a 29-year prosecutor. I served as a judge on the United States Immigration Court in Miami, Florida. I served President Bush at the Justice Department. I was Kentucky's outstanding county attorney in 2013. That's a resume. People want to meet the man, and here's what the man and the candidate favors. Kentucky borrows too much, it taxes too much, it spends too much, and it saves too little. Our taxpayers need an advocate. And this race is about who will be Kentucky's advocate for the taxpayers for the next 4 years. Among my chief concerns are the fact that the Democrats left us with a $25 billion hole for unfunded liabilities in our pension system. But it has also left Kentucky taxpayers with a $16 billion debt that we have to get out from under. To give you an example, every day, just for the privilege of getting out of bed, every Kentucky taxpayer shoulders a $20,000 debt. And how is that number derived? Well, divide the number of taxpayers into $16 billion, and you get a $20,000 debt being shouldered by our taxpayers. They never voted for that. They never consented to it, and yet it's there.
So we're tracking about 4 million people in Kentucky, a little over 4 million. Is that about right?
It's actually 4.5 million, but not all of those, 4.6 million, but not all of those people are taxpayers.
So what would you think are the number that are non-taxpayers in the state right now?
Well, in this case, we know that we have the 48th lowest labor participation rate of any state in the union.
48.
Which means that 44% of our eligible workers are staying at home. And how did that happen?
COVID.
The Democrats paid them to stay at home over the period of the pandemic, and they've never gone back to work. So we have a huge welfare bill. What we need to do is cut off the welfare and insist that they get back to work.
Yeah. What would you, go ahead.
So how does the treasurer fit into that piece of it? I mean, I understand that whenever I write a check from sales tax or anything like that, it goes to the Kentucky State Treasurer, and of course, when if I ever get a return on my income tax, it's from the treasurer. But how does the treasurer fit into identifying these types of situations, and how do they help the government fix this?
Well, first of all, the treasurer is an advocate, or should be. Our taxpayers have not had an advocate in terms of someone speaking about these issues and saying how we got here. And I intend to do that. That's one way to answer your question. But the other way to look at it is this. The Kentucky State Treasurer is the recipient and the payee of all tax proceeds, which means that we receive the money and we pay the bills. We look for fraud, and when we find fraud, we refuse to pay. If we find fraud after something has been paid, we contact the Attorney General and ask him or her to prosecute. The other thing to keep in mind is that the Kentucky State Treasurer chairs all pension boards. What we have now in Kentucky is we have a $25 billion unfunded liability among pensioners. That includes teachers, that includes what is called the Kentucky retirement systems. So the other thing to keep in mind is that the treasurer is obligated by state law to identify those financial institutions who are discriminating against fossil fuel producers, such as coal operators, coal miners, and let's not forget natural gas and petroleum. We have lots of petroleum that we're producing. We have a 300-year supply of anthracite, and that's coal. It's the cleanest coal in the world, and we're not taking advantage of that. And we're allowing the investment banks to say, if you don't invest your monies away from fossil fuels, we'll invest them for you away from the fossil fuels. And what Kentucky law says that I have to do as treasurer, or the treasurer has to do, let's put it that way, is to notify the state legislature, the General Assembly, in other words, that these institutions are discriminating against Kentucky's economic interests.
So I agree with you about fossil fuels, that we should be utilizing them more. We can produce clean energy in the United States, and we should not be foreign dependent, specifically in Kentucky, because we have a lot of resources underneath our topsoil that we could get after to help fund. If we were to get into a state where obviously big government gets out of our way so we can do things like that, what types of revenues do you see the state bringing back into the state if we did get back into the fossil fuel?
Well, first of all, let's remember that we've never really been out of it. But under the Obama administration, it was so tough to mine coal that coal mines were shut down. Now the value of coal has gone up, and coal producers, coal operators, coal miners can get back into the business. So let me give you a for instance. When we sell coal to another state, or we sell coal within the state, there are sales taxes. That's the first thing to remember. And then also remember that there are severance taxes, which come back not only to the state, but back to the counties where the coal was produced. Those are all revenue enhancers, and we need to be back into the business of mining coal, pumping oil, and harvesting natural gas. All of those things are positives for Kentucky. But let's also remember where the coal is going now. You know that the coal we're mining in Kentucky at one time was going to China? It still goes to China, but where else does it go? It goes to North Carolina. Why? Because their green technologies don't produce enough kilowatts or megawatts to provide energy for the state of Carolina or North Carolina. So there are lots of applications for Kentucky's fossil fuels in state and out of state.
I remember when I was, it wasn't that long ago, I guess, but it's been longer than I wanted it to be, I guess. I used to see, coal cars, lined up over the viaduct over Dixie Highway going into the Mill Creek LG&E plant, and those. Now I think they're pretty much all natural gas over there.
Yeah, many of the LG&E plants now operate off natural gas, but in some places they're operating off solar fuel or solar panels. Excuse me. We have solar farms in Garrett County, where I'm from, but the E.W. Brown power plant that was formerly owned by KU and is now owned by LG&E has been shut down entirely. It's not burning natural gas. It's using solar farms now. So it's a waste of first of all, it's a waste of assets. We have assets that have been idled, but let's also recall that without fear of contradiction, neither solar nor wind can replace fossil fuels. Yeah. And maybe one day they can. But right now they can't.
Now, because right now you can't capture, whatever is unused during the day, you can't capture that anywhere with enough reliability to say, hey, let's use it overnight. So you have to be running plants over, you have to be running power plants overnight at least. I have solar panels on my house. It was an economic decision for us. It made sense. And it is making sense, but it's still, those panels, we're already starting to see them degrade, and we've only had them like 4 years. And you see every month, it's a little bit, not every month, but every few months, you see a little bit less, made. So
I want to change and shift this a little bit back to the office of the treasurer. there's a lot of wasteful spending. So, what are some of the key focuses as a Republican going into that office? You're looking at wasteful spending. Secondary question is, we're a growing state. Obviously, we're reducing the state income tax. Hopefully, go to a zero state income tax. Where do you sit on the scales on that? So, first question, wasteful spending. How do you plan to get after that? What types of wasteful spending are you going to attack?
Well, let's first of all talk about the welfare bill. If you have that 44% of Kentucky's eligible workers on the sidelines and you say the welfare checks stop, then you're going to immediately see an improvement in the state's income taxes that are still there, number one. Number two, occupational taxes or the proceeds from occupational taxes will go up. So will sales taxes, because these people will be participating again in the economy. That's number one. But let's go to number two. Number two is how do we cut the waste, or where else can we cut it? Well, the other things we can be doing would be to, inside the Treasurer's office, which would be my responsibility, is find efficiencies. And as people retire, not replace them. As Garrett County Attorney, I've cut my office from a staff of 12 to a staff of 9. And what that's allowed us to do is extend our assets, our financial assets, well into the future, so that we have not had to seek an increase from the Garrett Fiscal Court now for the 3rd fiscal year. So I have a record as a proven tax saver, tax cutter, and efficiency builder into our local office. But beyond that, what else can we do? Well, we should be looking for efficiencies everywhere throughout state government. And that requires a number of things. Number one, it requires an attitude that we're not going to replace workers who have retired or for whatever reason have left the state workforce. And first of all, try to replace those same workers with efficient technologies. Now, where we need state workers, let's hire them and let's get the best qualified people we can to be the most efficient workers they can be. That would be my second idea. But beyond that, we have wasteful program spending that's happened all over throughout state government, and we should be eyeing every program instead of without starting each agency with the same amount of money it got the year before. Look at, can you ask them the questions that I ask myself in Garrett County? Where can we lower our workforce costs without disturbing services to the people of Kentucky? Just like I said, where can I cut costs without lowering services to the people of Garrett County? And that's the attitude that has to be adopted.
So with more people working, I agree, we would be able to bring in more revenue. Do you feel like if you're going to be a welfare check earner that you should be able to at least work some in order to get a welfare check? I know that there was some discussions about getting folks back to work, not just in this state, but in other states, in their welfare reform that, if you want to get a welfare check, you got to at least give 20 hours a week or 40 hours every 2 weeks and do some work and welfare. Over.
Well, my answer to that is you should not be receiving a check unless you are performing some sort of valuable assistance to the state or to the locality where you live. That's first of all. But number two, you ought to be actively seeking work. And we already require that people actively be seeking work. What we should be requiring is doing it on a graduated scale. If you work this much, you get this much as in a welfare stipend.
Yeah.
And if you work more, then you get less of a welfare stipend until you get nothing at all. And we have people transitioned back into the workforce.
I would say it's supposed to be a transition period, right? It's not. It's not supposed to be you're there forever.
That's yes. Welfare is not a benefit to anyone except the recipient who may need it. Let's be frank about that. But we don't have enough people in our workforce. We have employers crying for help. And what do we have? We have people who are refusing to enter the workforce in part because they can make more money sitting at home, or they can make enough to satisfy themselves by sitting at home. It's wrong. It's wrong to do to the taxpayers, and it's immoral for them to do it it's immoral for them to be doing it to the taxpayers. I'm talking about the workers who've idled themselves.
So I hear you talk about welfare programs, and this is true to me. It's near and dear to me because I recently took on 3 family members, 1, 4, and 7, and obviously at middle age, that's a big thing to take on at 1, 4, and 7. Those programs honestly don't get enough support. I'm not looking for a check from the state. I mean, I'm more than financially capable, but somebody in my situation that may not be as financially capable, I'll tell you, there's not a lot of support in that. In fact, there's not even enough foster parents to take care of the situations that occur from people. And I hate to stereotype a lot of folks, but if you're in welfare, it seems like those are the people with the highest cases of child family problems. Where do you see helping those types of programs over standard welfare programs so that children have a shot at growing up and leading a normal life away from that?
With some stability.
Yeah, with some stability.
Look, I'm a prosecutor, and Kentucky's family courts see the same problems you're talking about from the judicial side of the problem. The judicial side of the problem is that children are being abused, children are being neglected, and children are being rendered dependent inside of homes where usually the home is broken. At least one parent is gone,
right,
and the same parent that's at home may be on drugs. So let me give you an idea of where we can start saving money. Tennessee has done this to some good effect. It still needs to be monitored by Kentucky if we put it to work. But they found where moms and dads were using drugs. And what they were told was, if you will get off drugs, you can keep your children here at home. And then they would put them on weekly tests for drugs so that if they remained off drugs, the children stayed in the home, which is a benefit to the child and to the parent and to the state. So we don't have to put more money into a foster home. But let's give you the example of the pregnant woman who is about to have a child, but she's on meth or on heroin. Well, what they did in Tennessee was this. They said, you stay off drugs and you get to keep your child when that child is born. Now, what was the benefit of that? Here's the benefit. When that child was born, that child was not a drug addict. And we find that at the University of Kentucky, more than $20 million a year was being put into programs to support children who were born addicted to drugs. Now, if you don't have to put that $20 million into taking care of a drug addicted child, because the mom was weaned off drugs during the pregnancy, you've saved $20 million or something close to it. You're not going to be successful in every case. In the example you gave to me, which is a perfect example, you don't have enough foster parents for the number of children needing a foster parent. And to drive the point even further home, you have more applications to adopt children, more applications to be adopted. So there cannot be any, as I see it, any reason for us to continue with programs that continue to underwrite idleness and to continue to underwrite those who take the children away from them, and put them in a place where they can be raised by following those who've taken them into their own. That's my idea.
Well, I'll tell you, we go through a gallon of milk a day. This inflation is killing us. If I'm obviously in probably a much different situation than most to take on the responsibility, but you see a lot of family members taking on a lot of these situations because they're not getting off the drugs. Defund the police, all of those things. You hear about all that stuff. Where's your stance in making sure that we have the right legal actions taking place and the accountability of those parents that milk the system, so that the children don't have to go through? I mean, there's a lot of people that milk the system. Where do you see in helping that as far as making sure we get enough people to enforce the standards?
Okay, good point. Good question. Well, let's go back to your first question, and I'll answer the second one in order. You asked, where do I stand on defunding the police? Defunding the police is an abortion. It leaves fragile communities. That's the first thing that happens when you defund the police, and we've seen the results of that We've seen the results of that in Louisville with
Yes.
breakouts and violence, storefronts destroyed, and you've seen the same thing in Minneapolis and in Seattle. But remember this: the state with the largest outflow of any state in the union last year was Illinois, and Illinois taxpayers who left took with them $10.1 billion when they left. And the same thing happened the year before when another $9 billion left Illinois. That's what happens when you don't provide for law and order and protect the property of those who have created it and those who use it as a business asset. Now, let's go to your question about what do we do about the children inside of homes where you have idle parents, drug addicted parents, often who are the same, and then abusive parents. You do the same thing that we're doing in Kentucky courts right now, and you take those children out, and you can get an order of permanency, which places those children with a relative, or you can terminate parental relationships so that those children can be adopted. Now, what I favor is lowering the cost for adoption and permanency, and we've already done some of that by providing for attorneys at taxpayers' expense inside the permanency side of the equation. But for the adoption side of the equation, we simply do this. If you are able to help pay for an adoption, you will be charged on a graduated scale what you can pay. And what you cannot pay, the state will provide assistance up to a certain amount and no more. And that's how we drive down the cost of adoption. It's also how we get children into good homes more quickly.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to, because I know we're almost out of time, I want to give you a quick final thought on this campaign and all the way, we're a week and a day, I think, away from the election. Obviously, early voting starting in most counties coming up this week. Getting on board with our Republican Party, running the race to the finish line. What are your final thoughts for the citizens of Meade County?
Well, first of all, for the citizens of Meade County, we know that the county has been flipped to Republican.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Meade truth.
That's right. Hallelujah is right.
Mm-hmm.
But remember this, it's not an hallelujah if Republicans don't govern well.
That's right.
And we have to remember that the reason the people have put us into office or into positions of responsibility is because we promised to do a better job. And we need to be true conservatives throughout. That means finding ways to cut costs in government and lower the debts of this state so that we do not leave to our children the debts that we have created on our watch. It is immoral.
Amen.
It is the wrong thing to do. None of us, those of you in the studio, would not leave your children debts. You want to leave them at they can get a clean and fresh start when on. So that's one of the things that I talk about when I have more time, and I appreciate you all asking me about that tonight.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to slide out of here to the next segment, and but everyone, you've been listening to Mark Metcalf for Kentucky State Treasurer. Mark, we thank you so much for your coming on with us tonight, and we will, the point of this is to make sure that we get as much information to our voters as possible, regardless of who the candidates are, so that we can make a good decision. So, Mark, one last time, thank you for joining us, and good luck.
Very good. Thanks for that. Yeah, your time was valuable to all of us. We put this podcast together to educate voters, and for you to take your time on a Sunday, I mean, we called it a special edition tonight just to make sure your voice was heard. Thank you for giving us that opportunity, and I guarantee you, sir, if you get this job, we will hold you accountable. So we'll ask you. Go ahead.
I want you to ask me back, and I want you to visit with me from time to time so we can visit all these issues a second time and basically check up on my record.
Sounds great. We would look forward to it. So we're going to transition you out. Thanks again, sir. You have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, that was Mark Metcalf, everyone. Thank you again for joining us so far. We're not finished yet. We are actually expecting to have Alan Keck, candidate for governor,
coming up right now.
So we're going to switch over there, and we'll be right with you.
Oh, just keep on going.
Oh, we're gonna keep going. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna switch over here for a second here.
We are. Hold on. There
All
we
right.
go. So we're just waiting for him to show up. So listen, yeah, rare opportunity. I think we've had a lot of interaction today with, just this primary. With a lot of the candidates just in the last, I say, 6 months, strong showing.
Yes.
But over the course of a year and a half, we've accomplished a lot with this show, Mark.
Yeah, I think this show is doing what it's supposed to do. It's giving another avenue for, not just for candidates. It's really for Meade County. It's for the citizens of Meade County to be able to hear the candidates, talk with them, interact with them. It's growing. It's doing fairly well.
Yeah.
And I think that over time, it's doing its job completely. So we really hope that.
You can hear us? Okay, we got Alan on.
All right.
I'm going to
sounds
cut
good.
right to him, and we'll zoom this in and get us side by side here. So, Alan, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys great.
All right, great. I'm going to bring the music down. This brings in the next segment. Mark, I'll let you take the lead and introduce our new guest.
All right. Thank you all for continuing to join us here tonight on our special edition. We have now coming to us live in Zoom is Alan Keck. He is the current mayor of Somerset, and he is running for governor of Kentucky. And welcome to the show.
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Appreciate you guys having me on and chatting on a Sunday afternoon.
It is a good Sunday afternoon. We got a lot of rain though. I can't get the grass cut. So, but we're glad to have you on. That's a big race. I see the horse behind you. We just had the Kentucky Derby yesterday. It's fitting that you have a horse behind you because you were in the race. So all the way up till, you got a week and a day basically. Tell us why you're running for governor.
Well, I tell you, we've had back-to-back derbies that I kind of like symbolically of the medium to long shot that comes through at the end. So I'll take that as a little bit of serendipity. Look, I'm running for a couple pretty specific reasons, and the largest theme is that Kentucky's an incredible place, but we haven't been reaching our potential for a long time. If you look at the metrics, we're consistently in the bottom 5. And what I'm going to say is almost every important data point that we have. And I think it's unacceptable. We have a pattern and a trajectory of sort of going along to get along politics and doing the same old things. And I want to shake that up. We did the exact same thing in Somerset, where I serve as the mayor, where kind of for lack of a better term, good old boy system and always won out. And we were stale and stagnant.
Yeah.
I beat a 3-term incumbent, one of the most popular political families in Pulaski County. And since then, Somerset's been on a rocket ship. We've been growing. We've invested in public safety, and we're starting to tell our own story, and generations are coming home. I think that's possible in Somerset, and I plan to be the guy to get it done.
So would you say you're one of those guys that when somebody says, well, we've always done it that way, what's your first response?
That should never be the answer to anything.
I'm telling you.
Never. Never.
Well, we flipped Meade County through this podcast, so we're glad you're on here tonight to at least
love that.
get the voice out and educate our voters in Meade County about you. We've had lots of engagements over the last year. We've really opened up our social platform, so we're glad to have you on here tonight. So outside of being mayor, what did you do before that?
Well, I'm a businessman. First, let me just say thanks for your all's work. I think it's important to stay engaged. And if we're going to move the needle, we can't just sit around and complain. We got to do something. That starts with educating folks. Real quick anecdote. Yesterday I was doing some door-to-door, and, David Cooper's also running for governor. And, Coop's an interesting candidate. I'm just going to say how he describes himself. Blue-collar worker, swing shift guy, National Guard, not only veteran, but still active duty in the Guard. And so he had like 10 days to go back into service, and so he can't campaign the last 10 days. And the last time I saw him, I said, Coop, give me some of your materials. He said, what are you talking about, Keck? Why would you do that? I said, dude, you're serving our country. The least I can do when I'm going door to door is hand out some of your stuff and let people know who you are. They can then make a decision. And
Sure.
It's a small way to say thanks for his service, but it's a big field. I'll tell you, you asked what I did. I'll answer your question. I think this is probably the biggest thing that separates me is my executive experience. I was the CEO.
Yeah.
I was a businessman, and I ran a company that employed 100 people, did business all over the United States. And so I know how to deal with mom and pop business owner and Fortune 500 CEO. and I've done it at a high level. We took those skills to Somerset, where I'm the CEO of this city. And this is an executive job. The governor is the chief executive of Kentucky. And while I've got some friends in this race, look, no one else in this field has that experience, period.
Yeah.
And we've done it and done it at a high level.
So I can tell you, you've made some, we don't do any polling or anything here, but from the show, I mean, maybe it's something we want to do in the future, but just talking to people over the last, 3, 4, 5 weeks, they didn't know who you were just a few weeks ago, and now they talk about you around here just to let you know that.
Appreciate that.
And some of the things that they say about you is, you're kind of like a calming person within all this that's going on, all the political rhetoric and things.
Yeah, nothing negative.
Yeah, nothing negative. I heard one negative thing. As a matter of fact, they were most people seem to be very impressed with you. I don't know how that translates come next week, but it's definitely something that you should look at, with some pride.
Yeah. Hey,
well, I appreciate that.
So coming into this, okay, you knock out Andy Brashear. First of all, 2 questions. Ready? Primary's over. Somebody wins. Okay. We know your answer is going to be me, right? Okay. So you win, or whomever wins, we got to get everybody on board, right? Because we got to go after Andy Brashear next. So first question, you win. You want to get everybody on board. How do you do that? And then what do we need to do to go beat Andy Brashear and knock him out of the seat?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a couple things. I think, here's what I'll say, and you won't hear this from a lot of leaders, that I know God made me really, really good at a few things, but I'm not one of these cats that claims to be great at everything. I'm not a jack of all trades. I'm not one of these guys that has just this enormous skill set. Here's what I'm good at. I'm good at casting vision and dreaming God-sized dreams. I'm good at encouraging and empowering others to maximize their gifts. And I'm good at bringing people together. I've done it my entire life. I have unique ability to sort of coalesce folks that are around me. I've done it again in Somerset, where I inherited a city council who I think 10 of the 12 voted against me when I won. They haven't stopped a single piece of legislation or vision that I've pushed. And so here's my pledge to you all is win or lose, I will be at the table helping make sure that we come back together. Because this whole journey, by the way, is not about me.
Sure.
Before I ran for mayor, I took a giant pay cut to be the mayor.
Sure.
And I'm not a martyr. Like, I'm still blessed. Tiffany and I, my wife, we're still fortunate. But I chose to do this. I mean, people have asked, well, what in the world are you going to do if you lose? And I'm like, I don't know. Have more money, more free time, and less stress. Like, it's okay.
You cross that bridge when you get to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing this because I care about our plan, I care about these ideas, and I care about Kentucky. And to that aim, if I'm the nominee or not, we're going to continue to make sure we talk about things that will move Kentucky forward. Because I'll just tell you, the only way to beat this guy is to talk about what's impacting our lives here.
Yeah.
Andy has done a good job of
ruining our state. Just kidding.
Saying that.
I said ruining our state. I don't know.
Well, here's what I'm going to say, though, to you is, everybody says this is the most important election ever. I mean, I don't know how much further we have to go backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 48th in workforce. We're 48th in fiscal stability. We're 44th in healthcare. We're 48th in median income. Like, I mean, okay, maybe West Virginia and Mississippi start to beat us, but we need something just different.
Sure.
And we need real leadership. I think I can help get that done regardless who the nominee is. I mean, I'm not the front runner. I'm not naive to that. Daniel's been up there. Kelly spent a pile of money, enough to run a small militia. Ryan's been doing this for 10 plus years. One of them, I guess, is the front runner. Although I think if I can turn out Southeastern Kentucky, we got a real punch of chance in this thing.
Sure.
And that's kind of our plan. To beat him, we're going to have to. Again, I'm talking a lot here, but we got to talk about things that impact Kentucky lives. The workforce crisis, the child care crisis. We tried this whole notion in 2022, Biden, Bashir bad. That's all the Republicans wanted to say nationwide. Biden bad, Democrats suck. 70% of the nation said we were heading in the wrong direction. We didn't flip a stinking seat.
Yeah, you're right. We need to bring some better solutions, and it comes down to education, which is what we started this show with just the idea that we're going to educate people about what are these offices that people are running for? What are they supposed to be doing for you? Because if they don't know that, then they don't know if they're putting the right person in that place.
That's right.
And so that's what
good.
we started. So we started with just, hey, this is, what does the PVA do? What is the, what is expected from the mayor of Brandenburg? What's expected
Magistrates.
from the magistrates and things like that. So the people just understand the basics of the office. And I think that's, we've had a lot of people, comment about that, said we didn't realize all that and how that impacts us. So now they're making a better choice. They can make a good choice now because we're offering people who fit those skills.
Sure.
And they understand that now. And I think that's helping us.
Well, we need 120 of you all. Let me tell you that. If we had something like what you all are doing there in every county.
We've offered to share over and
Yeah.
over again. I mean, this is all out of pocket. We don't charge for this. We just do this to get the message out. So,
That's right.
And
Beautiful,
if everybody could emulate it, we've got it on a dusted off. Here you go, and this is what you need to do.
Yeah, we do the podcast. We also put out
paper.
We also put out newspapers during the. And we basically hit every door in Meade County. So when you if I should say you win the primary, we'll be talking to you about, hey, what do you want to put in, that sort of thing. So and it'll be about educate. We ask you to first educate people about what the office is, and then tell them why you're the right person to do that.
It's also an EDDM. It goes to every door and business in the county. So it's not just the EDDM like your card that you do. It's an EDDM with your story. So you get more for the reader than just and it's going to hit all the Democrats. It's better than you being able to go door to door and knock on all the doors. But it worked for us. I'm not going to say that it's going to work in every county across the state, but it's definitely. I mean, media. You cannot get a true story in media today. I mean, I think you get a true story, but I think you get a scratch at the surface, and it's blockaded by whatever their narrative is. And so this is unfiltered. We keep it clean. I think for the most part, I might say a D word like damn here and there, but for the most part, it stays very clean and it stays very neutral, especially like when we talk with all the candidates to give them each an equal opportunity to talk to the voters. But at the end of the day, it's really, what are you going to do for us? What do they need to know about you so we can get that out there to the people? And, I think for this governor race, people like you, it's a lot of courage. It's a lot of, how many pairs of shoes have you been through so far?
Well, we got 25,000 miles on the truck, and I've ruined, I think, 4 or 5 of these button-ups, blue and white. I've lost 2 sport coats, and God only knows how many pair of scuffs are on. I rotate shoes, so I guess I haven't ruined a single pair. I've damaged 5 or 6.
Yeah. What do you think that the voters need to know about this office this year? Regardless of who wins, what is the thing that we have to do with this office? And what is the biggest thing that we have to improve in our state when we get in that office?
Man, great questions, which I'm going to tell y'all, I've answered over 1,200 questions in this campaign. It's one of the things we're proud of. I haven't ducked a single question from a citizen or the media, and I won't. Even the tough ones we answer. 2 things I think about the office, and then what's the most important. To save America, I think we have to start electing quality conservative governors. If you look at the degradation of society and sort of this bloat of federal government spending and overreach, it's because the states allowed it. We decided that it was better to take the printed money that the Fed and that Washington has created and give it to us for our roads or for, COVID stimulus or for, you name it, Medicare expansion.
Sure.
Instead of pushing back and running our states in a fiscally responsible way, when you do that, you become little brother to them forever. Then you no longer get to say, you no longer get to say no. And I don't think America was designed. I know America wasn't designed for 535 elected officials and their unelected bureaucrats to run things for everybody. So, I guess my big dream, my God-sized dream is that, we go elect 35 to 40 conservative governors. We put our heads together and we take our country back. I think that's achievable. I think if you look at some of the good governance in Texas and Florida and South Dakota and, partially in Tennessee, I think South Carolina over the last several years, I think you can make that argument. For Kentucky, we can't have over 40% of our populace who's able-bodied not working. Well, it just simply can't continue.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just.
Well, it's a crisis because we're not growing in population. Kentucky's stagnant. We just had our second slowest decade of growth in 100 years, in spite of all our natural advantages. And so we're not growing, and then we have a low percentage of people who live here working here. Those two things have to be transformed. And if we do that, I think Kentucky can be on a rocket ship. I really do.
Yeah. So, and I agree. You going back to your first point. We take so much money from the federal government, which makes us beholden as a state to the federal government. We just keep asking over and over again. It doesn't feel like, that's not the intent of the United States in its original form, right? It was meant to be a collective and of states, a confederacy really of states, or that would allow them to have a united defense, and then to organize commerce between the states. That's really what it was intended to be. And but even back in the beginning, there were people who wanted it to be more. They wanted it to be more like a monarchy, or where all the power starts at the top and rolls down, and you do what they say. And it feels like they just kept taking a piece of it at a time and getting to us, and it kind of feels like that's where we are. Like we're living in some sort of aristocracy rather than.
In some ways, and the New Deal expanded the Fed in a way to try to save the country, but there's so many unintended consequences. I'm a 10th Amendment guy, and it says, look, all things not specifically delegated to the federal government remain sovereign to the states and the people. That's us, guys. I mean, and Kentucky right now has been as low as 50th. I don't know if we are today, but I guarantee we're close. In the worst investment in America. For every dollar we're sending, we're taking like $2.50 back. And so it crushes me as a conservative to say this, but we've allowed ourselves to become the nanny state. We are completely dependent on the federal government for survival, and that's disgusting.
We need to be at a place where if the federal government shut down, we would be independent. Speaking of independence, not just from financial, but also in our presence, the nation has a problem today with presence. And I just mean as far as dominance as a world power in the sense of our military. Now, everybody will say we have a strong military, but over the last few years, recruitment numbers have been very low. And a lot of that is coming from our education system and the lack of interest in serving. How do you feel as the governor when you take this office, if you're elected, you're going to impact patriotism and education and not make us so soft?
Yeah, love that. Well, the first thing I'd say is I get asked about, how do you handle the power? And I say it's not power, it's public service. I mean, I think you start by just quality leadership. It's an honor, guys, to get to lead and serve my hometown. And I mean an absolute privilege and honor. I'll treat the exact same way if I'm the governor. I hate that you might hear one of my kiddos in the background. I apologize for that.
No, it's fine.
That's life.
We this celebritization of politicians, we stand up and applaud when a congressman walks in the room. Well, why?
Yeah.
I mean, they work for us.
Yeah.
And so as we kind of delve back into patriotism, I think it starts at the top on, the type of humility and who we're going to elect. Somebody that feels like it's a privilege to work for you all.
Sure.
Not that you should be privileged to
see
me.
Yeah.
And I the other thing I use the term backing the badge, and it's kind of a new term because the popular version was back the blue. But I think to do it right, it has to be beyond just police. And look, I love our police. My police chief was chief of the year a couple of years ago. He's now the president of the association. I love him. I love local law enforcement. I love state police, you name it. But when I say back the badge, I mean anyone who dons that uniform. Police, fire, EMS, the folks that work in our jails and correctional facilities, and absolutely, of course, our military men and women and our veterans. If we honor them in word and deed, patriotism will take care of itself.
Yeah.
But that has to...
It's not happening,
That has to start at the top, and that's how I'll lead.
Yeah, it's not happening enough, though, and it's discouraged in our schools often too much. So where do we make the impact in our schools and shut some of that down so that we can...
I mean, one thing we've done in Somerset is before the state legislature even passed anything, we put a SRO in there, and I said, developing a relationship. We use the term community-oriented policing. These kids need to see cops as the good guys.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the only time they ever see them is if they're taking mom, dad, aunt, or uncle away. Well, they're still the good guys. You know, when I grew up, cops and robbers, you wanted to be the cop.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think it is the societal issue. You're exactly right about that. But it's just about being intentional every time we can to honor them. Like I say,
It's a great
not
answer.
just with pay, but in word and in deed.
No, it's a great
right.
answer. I don't know if you know, my background's 32 years, just retired. It's been actually retired and then started all this. But same, but it's declining.
Well, thanks for your service. I didn't realize
I
that.
appreciate it. Not looking for anything out of that, but it's just something that I see from my purview after so long just being narrowly into, you know, you don't get a voice too much often when you're behind the uniform. You just go and do because you follow orders. That's what you do. That's what makes us strong. I just don't know that we have enough people doing it now. You know what I mean? And
Well, nationally, we've lost 200,000 out of the profession in the last year. You know, we're not far from. It's kind of like the.
I love
nursing
that you
crisis
said that. It is a profession. All of those services are a profession, and you know they talk about that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm glad you said it that way.
Well, again, it's you won't see me walk by a person in uniform and not thank them. And I don't introduce myself and ask for a vote. I might as well just be a citizen, but and I am just a citizen. I mean, even I was at Churchill on Thursday and saw a group of fire guys, and they kind of looked surprised when I thanked them for their service and said, "Man, that's a shame. You shouldn't. You should hear that 50 times a day. You shouldn't pay for a meal, when you're out at a fast food restaurant. You shouldn't pay for your soda when you're at a gas station.
Sure.
It's I told the men and women in Somerset, you'll be here when I got here and you'll be here when I'm gone. You all are the real heroes in my community.
Well, I scruffed up a little bit, so I'm incognito. You'd never know that I had ever spent that time, but I try to keep a low key. But I'm glad that you have that view. It's important to me, and I know all of the veteran community, so I'm glad to hear that point of view. If you take the office of governor, and what do you see as some of our biggest educational problems in the state in moving us forward to, you were talking earlier about industry and, we need to be more self-sufficient. Where do we need to improve our education to get there?
We've got a healthcare crisis, and I think some of that's education, honestly. I mean, Kentucky leads America in diabetes and heart disease. That's a lack of education. We're one of 6 states in America that don't have school vouchers or school choice broadly. I think that's a real issue because lack of competition then drives us down. I shift from the party that's not as popular as some, but I believe in early childhood education because the data tells me that kids do better when we train them earlier.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if parents don't like it, look, it's not a mandate. You have the right to homeschool or not at that age if you don't want your kid going away.
So do you think that? So do you think that some of that money that goes to regular public schools should go to some of these private schools and school choice? Or do you think
and I tell you, my plan, I think, sets precedent because nobody's going to bankrupt the private preschools, nor should we.
Right.
But, Tiffany and I were blessed. If we wanted to send our kids to preschool to get them a head start, we could. We could afford that. But the kids so often that need it the most can't. Well, I think that's the pathway to let some of the dollar, and we got to be careful here. It doesn't have to be dollar for dollar. In fact, it probably shouldn't be,
right?
Because they're not getting the same level of state asset to do it. But let's compromise and take some of that money, let it follow the students for pre-K. At which point, then we have precedent for private school and homeschool.
Right.
Some of these problems aren't rocket science if we'll just drop our stinking egos.
Yeah.
Why can't homeschool kids use a chemistry lab at a public school after hours?
Sure.
That asset sits dormant 16 hours a day.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about just having, because you could have, I just automatically started thinking about that. It's like you could actually have, hire a teacher that's just there kind of like in a general supervisory, after hours just for those kids or something, right? And have that available, not necessarily a teacher, but someone who's, understands and can supervise the lab or what have you. Open it up for an extra, 4 hours or something in an evening. That's a great idea.
The other push
it never occurred to
I
me.
think we've forced college down kids' throats for so long.
Oh my Lord, I could talk about that for a week. Go ahead.
Yeah.
How do you go to trade school, learn how to be an electrician, and then you're told you need to go to college to be an electrician?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
For an appraiser, you got to go get a degree that has nothing to do with being an appraiser.
No.
only so you accumulate 200 grand of debt so you can go back and do what you were taught to do in 6 months.
Prosecution rest. I couldn't have said that any better.
Yeah.
I have seen the ebbs and flows of college being shoved down the throats, but that's also where I think our nation has liberalized most of our youth. Do you know what I mean?
I call it
It
the
is.
church of the left.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story about myself. Is I have an electronics engineering background, but I didn't have I didn't even have a bachelor's degree. And what happened was I got so far in my career, and I got to a point where they finally just said, you need to go get a degree to continue your path. And I said, okay. I said, well, what specific degree? They said they don't care. Just it had to be a piece of paper. It
Ridiculous.
did not matter what I had went and learned. I just had to have a bachelor's degree. And that doesn't make any sense.
And it's a money-making racket. That's my frustration.
Oh,
These
yeah.
kids
That
leave
started
with
back with the Clintons. I mean, that's how far back.
$200,000 of debt. And for what?
Yep.
For almost nothing. I mean, there's
college
something that's necessary.
You're going to
It works.
professional school. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of pathways where it can help. Personal development, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
I think it's too long, too. I mean, you spend the first 2 years in undergrad doing gen ed, which is the same shit, excuse my language, you just learned in high school.
Yeah.
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 So we're just about out of time here. So let's give us your elevator pitch. Why should the people of Meade County vote for you?
Well, I'm going to tell you three things, folks. And thanks for watching. Thanks for giving me a shot. It's a crowded field of good people. They're not my opponents. They're just applying for the same job in a very public way. Three things. I'm unapologetically authentic and transparent. And I've answered every question. Anything you want to know about Alan Keck, you can find out. I think that's important because you deserve to. And also I think it's important because when you ask questions, I learn what's important to you, which will allow me to be a better steward and govern better for you. Second thing is I'm the only true executive in this race. I've been an executive, as I mentioned, CEO in my private life and public life, and I've governed and led at a high level in both. We are electing a CEO. We need to get rid of the one that we had who never built a team, never led at a high level. His dad made him attorney general, helped make him governor. And it goes to show from workforce development to the unemployment office to pretty much anything outside of some of these strategies. This has been an inept administration, and they've really struggled. And the final thing I'll tell you is I have a vision. The Keck game plan, I published on day one. I filed with the platform. I didn't need to wait and look at poll or focus group data to tell me what was important. We talk about the economy, we talk about public safety, education, and pro-family policy, making sure that Kentucky's not just pro-life but pro-family. And I believe in, Republicans can start to take the lead again on good conservative governance. I'm not one of these no government Republicans. I think that there are things that we can do. Let's be great at what's necessary and get rid of everything else. But let's incentivize the behaviors that we want instead of rewarding those that we don't. If you like that common sense, do something approach, I'm your guy. And if not, look, that's the beautiful thing about this process. I'll respect it either way.
Thank you for your time tonight, everyone. Everyone that's out there, it's time to vote, starting on Thursday. So you've heard from Mr. Keck tonight, Mayor Keck from Somerset, running for governor, and we appreciate you coming out and talking with us on a Sunday afternoon. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and hope that no matter what happens, we can have a conversation with you again in the future.
I'd love to. It's been a blessing, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're glad to have you on, and if you do get elected, just know we'll hold you accountable, and we hope to see you after you make it to the big time, and if you do, we'd love to have you back. So
I'll be back on anytime you guys ask.
Well, we're glad to hear that, and hopefully we get to see you. Well, I know you may see us at Fancy Farm again, so I don't know. We'll see. So.
All right, I dig it. All right, guys. Have a blessed
Thank
day.
you.
You too.
All right.
Thanks. Wow. What a show, Mark.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel, buddy. I mean,
we had two great guests, a lot of good information out there.
Yeah.
I'm glad everybody had a chance to hear that. If you didn't hear it live, if you're listening to us on the playback, I think that was one of the some very great information about these two candidates, and I came away a little bit inspired.
I actually thought it went off without a hitch. The stream started, the recording started. We had one minor detail on the other end, but we got both candidates live through a Zoom, first time show. I mean, I felt like this was crazy.
It felt it felt awesome.
And both candidates, I mean, swinging it out of the park tonight with Hart. I think they weren't too softballish, but
no, I mean, I think both of them took our questions, and I don't think that we didn't give them anything. You know, we asked them tough questions. I thought so. I think that you know, they answered those questions without any, and they actually answered the questions. But you know what? I think we had the same with all the other candidates that we've had on.
Sure.
I haven't had one candidate that hasn't come out and said, you know, and they've never avoided a question at all. So I think that we've had a really good campaign season. I don't think we'll have any more on, but the rest of this week. But if one wants to call in and say, yeah, you know, I want to be on, we have Thursday nights call. So,
well, stay tuned. Obviously, Thursday night we'll be back on for the podcast.
Yep.
Maybe not. Actually, I think we're going to delay that because of the voting that's going on. I think we may come in for a little chime in to see how the voting's going through Saturday, and then next Tuesday we'll be on, unless you're going to come on, Mark. But tune back in. You'll see us Thursday, and it'll be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.